Gospel readings for the season of Advent, the first Sunday every year, seem a really strange and bizarre way to begin a season that ends with beautiful, tranquil scenes of a silent night and a baby laid in a manger surrounded by angels singing hark, and shepherds tending their flocks, and Zoroastrians preparing for a journey eastward. They're strange, but their violent imagery prepare us for Advent, with these kinds of apocalyptic Mad Max end of the world scenes straight out of the minds of Hollywood directors. They prepare us for the reality we live in and that which we hope. Now, this particular scripture from Luke is part of a longer section in which Jesus describes the destruction of the temple, a public statement that kept adding to the conspiracies and plots stirring against him. What he describes is terrifying, because it's not only the demolished temple, he foretells false prophets, wars and uprisings, food shortages, natural disasters, persecution, and epidemics. Sadly, we know these things are not simply apocalyptic Mad Max end of the world scenes straight out of the minds of Hollywood directors. These are the steady news feed on our phones or on the pages of our daily newspaper. We know the fear and foreboding that Jesus describes. But do we also know the hope he describes in the fig tree? Do we know deep in our bones that whether birth or death, from incarnation to crucifixion and resurrection, God always has the last word? Do we know? Can we imagine that hope and peace and joy and love are the home God is preparing for us even now? But not in heaven, but as Jesus taught us to pray, on earth as it is in heaven. Not some pie in the sky by and by when we die, but something sound on the ground while we're still around. That's my favorite description of progressive Christianity by UCC pastor Kenneth Samuel. I wish I could claim credit. But do we know this deep in our bones? A deep longing, a kind of homesickness even, for a home we've never experienced. But how can we be homesick for a home we've never known? I asked my Facebook friends on Friday, how can home be a place you've never been? Elizabeth Wheeler answered, it's wherever the Coast Guard sends us. Kathy said, it's walking into just the right house, knowing this is the one you'll buy. One person said, home is a feeling, safety, warmth, comfort, unconditional love. My best friend said, you won't know it until you're there and you feel it. You can dream and think a place will be your home, but you won't know that until that spark occurs. Now, I didn't have that spark when I stood on the overlook at Pacific Beach in April. I don't know what exactly I felt, but I certainly had no idea that I was home, or that I had been longing for a home where I had never been. And yet, even though I may live here now, it won't be my home until my family arrives in 2023. And I can relate to homesickness too, but it's not for Denver. It's for Art to be here, and then it will be our home. But all of this got me to thinking about the complexities and complications of the word home. Home is not the smell of Christmas cookies baking in the oven for everyone. We may say home is the place where people have to take you in, but that's not the reality for everyone. The place where who we are will not be allowed under this roof. Home for some is the abuse of a father, or the mental illness of a mother, or the death of a young sibling, or the holiday meal with an empty table, either empty of food or empty of the person with whom we shared that home for 50 years. Or one person's nostalgia is another person's nightmare. This makes me think of our church's connection with Just in Time for foster youth. What if home for a 12-year-old has already been 28 different bedrooms and all your belongings in a garbage bag? Now, among their programs, I love the My First Home program, perhaps the first leaf on a long dormant fig tree that's been waiting for the opportunity to grow. But the more I thought about home, the more I felt grief for refugees fleeing war, whether in camps or crossing one border after another, looking for a new home. You know, that kind with safety and warmth, comfort, unconditional love that we may take for granted. Or the pain of internment camps forced upon Japanese families who were forced to try to make things normal for their children. Or the outrage I felt listening to the stories of gratitude by Lakota families on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation for receiving formaldehyde-soaked FEMA trailers deemed unfit for living by victims of natural disasters, yet welcomed as upgrades on the res. That and lead pipes in Flint give a whole new meaning to the word homesickness. And I wonder, does the metaphor of the fig tree still work? And yet, hope survives. And amazingly, though lives may be difficult, yet they thrive. Maybe all this does really point to the fact that home is simply where the heart is. The church I served in Cleveland for 15 years was in the inner city, with people who had very difficult lives, some due to choice, much due to circumstance. We turned our parsonage into a three-quarter house for people in drug and alcohol recovery, meaning it was halfway between a halfway house and independent living. We had prostitution off our front steps of the church and swept the playground every morning for used needles. But that's what you did to welcome kids so they could get a head start on the world. Are you hearing a feedback? Yeah, so now we're having feedback in the back. Well, one of the answers for the question I asked on Facebook came from a member of my former church who had his own version of a very difficult life. He said, I've always felt that the Exodus story was a great template for finding home. It was a story about purging things about yourself and purging the things or people that will hurt you. And like wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, time-consuming too. But he said, once the purging and processing is fairly well finished, then you're at home in any landscape you're in. And then, he said, of course, you then turn around and help the next person find their way home too. Well, this Advent, we are taking a journey, each Sunday a step closer to home, not just Christmas. And today begins by recognizing the world that Jesus describes. Frighteningly real. And we express our deep longing. As in the words of the call to worship, homesickness for a just world and an end of suffering. Fiona and Ben shared so clearly the home we seek, a world where all are fed, a world with more bridges than walls, a world with wide open doors, a world full of contagious laughter, where trees grow tall and rivers run clean, and all people feel at home in their bodies, in the church, and in their physical homes, and for those without, an actual home. In the words of our liturgy for today, we are homesick for that world, even though it's a place we've never been. But that's where we are this first Sunday of Advent. We live with endless warring factions and divisions, and waves of pandemic surges and new variants. And we can express hope or allow cynicism to win. We can hope against hope, or we can throw in the towel. We can insist on a better world, or we can assume it's impossible and be satisfied we've made it and let everyone else fight over the scraps. But that's not us. We have stories of resilient hope to draw from. You have a story of resilient hope to draw from and to share. We know that home is here and what we make of it, and not yet. Not until everyone is at home in a world of peace, joy, and love. But could it be that the world is about to turn?